Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. Obviously, if all seniors had the option, they would be living at home, but sometimes that isn't always possible. Well, guess what? That is where Texan Senior Residential Care Homes comes into the picture. Texan specializes in making its facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. I'm talking full living room, kitchen, dining room, cable TV, music, games, fireplace, you name it. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes has it. They've even got home cooked meals by experts. It's an extra throw-in. Not only that, there are no move-in fees, no visitation restrictions, so your loved ones are free to stop by and visit anytime they please. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes are located at I-635 in Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more info, you can call 469-400-7650. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Devin Hassan, sports editor for the Mesquite News and Rowlett Lakeshore Times, as well as Taylor Ragland, who does sports for the Plano Star-Courier, Allen American, and the Lake City Sun. Gentlemen, week 4 of the high school football season is here. It is still in flux because already, what a surprise! More bad weather is expected later this week. So, yeah, a lot of our games are by the minute being moved from Friday to Thursday to try to get a head start on Mother Nature after 2 straight Fridays of just weather delays and cancellations. So, for the games that we talk about today, I mean, we're recording this around 12:30 on Wednesday. So the times and places and dates that we give you are as of now. We'll see if those things change, before tomorrow. But nevertheless, we've got let's preview some of the marquee games that are on tap for week 4. A bit of a lighter schedule this week because a lot of our schools are on bye. So but nevertheless, despite the sample size not being as much volume, I guess, as in previous weeks for our game of the week poll, we actually had the most entertaining game of the week poll yet this season, and one that finally, after 3 weeks we had just one game that just distanced itself from the pack. We had two games that went right down to the wire and was decided by one vote. And after a back and forth between Allen and Plano and Sunnyvale and Glen Rose, it is little old Sunnyvale that comes out on top. Devin, you warned us.
Yeah, I did. I mean, the school with a little over 400 in enrollment beat the 2 schools with a combined 12,000 students. So.
And so nevertheless, shout out to Sunnyvale. By one vote, they were able to edge. And this was right at the wire, too. I mean, I checked that poll at around, the deadline was, 5 o'clock on Tuesday. I checked the poll at 1 o'clock just to see how things were shaken up. And Sunnyvale had closed the gap to within 8 votes of Plano and Allen. And, I went and, tweeted the link back out. And let's go. Let's see how this looks coming to crunch time. And I checked, each hour. And it just bit by bit, Sunnyvale just closed the gap just by a couple votes, and then right at the wire they eclipsed them with that one necessary vote to make them the game of the week.
Shout out to whoever that was.
Yeah, it's definitely a community that rallies together around pretty much everything out there, but particularly the football team.
So Sunnyvale welcomes Glen Rose in a nice little non-district game at the 4A level. This one, as of now, is set for Friday, 7:30 p.m. out at Raider Stadium, in a game that first off, it gets cool that we're going to get a chance to finally talk a little bit of Sunnyvale just in depth, because I know we don't get a chance to divulge into our 4A programs as much. And I mean, let's be honest, Allen and Plano, just because of the stature of the games that they play in the district that they play in, they're going to be on this poll plenty other times throughout the year. So it's nice to throw Sunnyvale a bone, because this is no doubt a significant game for them as far as
close as the poll too.
Yeah, as far as kind of just a nice litmus test to see where they're at. The Raiders have looked the part so far of handling that transition to to Class 4A. They're 3-0. Glen Rose comes in with a 2-1 record, albeit a strong 2-1 record. So Devin, Sunnyvale is your squad. So so far within these first 3 weeks, just what have your impressions been on Sunnyvale and how they've acclimated to Class 4A?
It's been a pretty smooth transition thus far. Last week they had two solid outings. I thought the first week against Kemp was, it's not a statement game, but it was something that was on their mind in the offseason because Kemp was a state semifinalist in 3A last year and was a district rival of Sunnyvale's. So they knew about, they're going into kind of uncharted waters with a lot of their opponents, but this was a team that they knew. And so they kind of knew what Kemp had, and it was kind of a good measuring stick. And they were able to go out there and post a pretty solid 35-19 victory. Follow up that with a win over Van Alstyne. And then last week, kind of got into a shootout with Brownsboro. Yeah. But they never were really threatened. They kind of kept them at arm's length. Every time Brownsboro would kind of creep close, they just give the ball back to Tripp McAda in the red zone. And their outstanding junior quarterback finishes this game with 7 touchdowns, 2 passing, and 5 rushing. Again, they went score for score in the second half. And it was just Tripp McAda, 5 yards out, 8 yards out, 4 yards out. So he's off to a tremendous start this season. I think they really, last season they struggled in the passing game. And going forward, they really haven't had to throw the ball much. They're averaging, he's attempted 22 passes in 3 games. Again, just simply because they haven't had to. He's kind of the catalyst in that ground game. He's got 57 carries for 336 yards, 8 touchdowns. But they have, it's a kind of a committee thing right now also. They have a sophomore that's kind of stepped up, Emmanuel Arinze, who's 24 carries, 254 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brian Perry, who missed all of last season with an injury, has come back and filled in nicely both there and in the secondary. He's averaging about 10 yards a carry. The X factor to me in the ground game, and I'm really curious to see how they use him going forward, is Devin Sterling. And again, I hate making comparisons, and I certainly don't like to compare anybody to their older brother, but it's just really interesting to me how they used his older brother Trey Sterling, who's down at Oklahoma State, who was an all-state defensive back his sophomore year and his junior year, and they would kind of pick their spots to use him on offense. His senior year, he was a full-time running back, as well as playing both ways, but then he rushes for 2,500 yards and wins the district MVP. And so they've kind of done the same thing with Devin Sterling, who's just a junior. Again, their star linebacker, but they kind of picked their spots to put him in. They put him against Van Alstyne in the first quarter a couple weeks ago, and he scores 2 touchdowns. And then, okay, you're nice on offense, you go back to playing defense. So I'm really kind of curious to see how they handle that going forward, if they do kind of plug him in more and more in certain spots. But I mean, the offense, again, the big thing is the development of the passing game. And they have some very capable receivers. Trevor Tuttle leads the team with 8 catches, but Matt Herrera, Ashton Wright, Will Van Vessem, Noah McDill, these are all guys that have made catches in the passing game. And you think they would be in good shape as far as from a protection standpoint. Big Marcus Alexander, the Oklahoma commit, anchors that line along with Alex Barrett, Sam Bardis. So they've got experience there, and they've certainly showed they can move the ball on the ground. But I'm really curious, especially this week when it could turn into a shootout, how that passing game comes along.
Let's then segue right into just a little bit of backstory on Glen Rose, a program that I'm guessing not many people that are listening to this are familiar with. Glen Rose, which is 100 minutes away from Sunnyvale. That's another interesting subplot, is just the many potential effects of having to make that travel. But nevertheless, just some backstory on Glen Rose. They are 2-1. Their wins so far have been over Grandview and their terrifying zebra inflatable.
I think it's great.
I showed Taylor that this morning for the first time because I remember when Grandview came to visit, it was against Sunnyvale, right?
Yes.
And you were at that game and you took the picture of that thing, and I had never seen anything like it. That is nightmare fuel.
Caught fire on Twitter.
Never lose a game.
just the intimidation factor.
The opponent
if you have a second, go Google Grandview zebras and then go to the image search, and you're bound to see a picture of their inflatable. It is a zebra, but it is the most terrifying looking animal that you've ever seen. I don't know how any team doesn't just get mentally psyched out just looking at that thing, and its red eyes, and it looks like it should have like blood dripping out of its nostrils, and it's just a devilish creation. But Glen Rose was able to overcome that, and they picked up a 52-30 victory against Grandview. They followed that up with a 42-36 victory over Waco Connolly. They did lose to Springtown 49-43, albeit Springtown, a quality program. I believe they're ranked number 2 in their region by the Texas High School Coaches Association. And
they're bigger. They're 4A Division I.
Yeah, so no shame in that setback. The thing that jumps out immediately when we just spent all this time talking about just Sunnyvale and their prolific offense, and Glen Glen Rose, I should say, just has that in spades. I mean, their spread offense is it is a vertical passing game in the truest sense. I mean, they're going to attack Sunnyvale deep quite a bit throughout this game, it appears. It's an experienced offense. They got 7 returning starters. They do make use of a tight end and an H-back just to add an extra blocker just in case they decide to trick things up with their run game and whatnot. But it all starts behind center with Cameron Griffin, who threw for almost 40 touchdowns last year, and he is well on pace for that again. He's got 10 already through 3 games. They primarily favor the runs, 56-44 as far as your run-pass splits go. But their running game it's one of 2 options. It's either going to be Griffin, who will at times keep it on a lot of zone read stuff, or their running back Weston Holcomb, who's averaging at least 7 yards per carry and has many a long touchdown run already this season. He is just on film. I mean, a lot of those touchdown runs you can see about 4 or 5 broken tackles. I mean, just a handful to bring down. And he also doubles as their leading receiver. Yep. He averages 17.5 yards per reception, and it's not just little dump offs and whatnot. I mean, they will they'll motion him out wide and send him deep. They'll just send him straight down the seam out of the backfield. I mean, he's part of that that 4 verticals or whatever you want to call the passing attack of theirs. I mean, they are going to put a lot of pressure on Sunnyvale secondary with the job that that Griffin does spreading the ball around downfield. Their defense, they return 5 starters. Most of that experience resides in their front 7. Guys like Keegan Bunt, who's averaging 1 sack per game. Linebacker Ricky Douglas, he had more than 125 tackles last season. Their leading tackler, at least per the numbers submitted to Max Preps, is a guy with, how's this for a high school football name? Brian Pounds.
That's right up there with Bumper Pool. Maybe not quite in that category.
Like this, from birth, you knew this kid was going to be a linebacker someday. But as we just mentioned with those scores, they can give up points. They're not immune to letting the other offense have some shining moments as well. They've given up 38.3 per game, which, considering that they're 2-1, I mean, you don't usually associate, when you've given up more than 38 points per game with a winning record. But nevertheless, that just speaks to how prolific the offense has been. One thing we just mentioned, Sunnyvale and their, what was it, just 22, 23 pass attempts this season? Yeah. I mean, they're primarily a run team, and that's where, if you look at what happened to Glen Rose in that in the Springtown game, they got gashed on the ground pretty bad. Taylor, I'm sure you got the numbers right in front of you.
Yeah, it looks like Cameron Rickett, Jr. for Springtown, they have him on Max Preps going for 281 yards and 4 TDs by himself. So, for all the experience you just said that Glen Rose brings back in the box, I mean, that's still that's quite a night from one guy on the ground, and obviously it's not going to get any better with Sunnyvale with Tripp McAda. That's another guy that can absolutely just fly and make things happen on the ground. So it's an interesting game for me, because I think if you're Sunnyvale, you don't want to get in that kind of shootout game that Glen Rose has been playing pretty much every time out so far, just because the passing game still evolving and still kind of figuring in to having a bigger role, and maybe not quite as established as Glen Rose's obviously is. So I think if you're Sunnyvale, you want to try to get in one of those games where you're holding them to under 20 points if you can. I mean, maybe it's not possible with a guy like Cameron Griffin for Glen Rose that is consistently gone for 3-4 touchdowns a game. So if it's a shootout, then I mean, it's anybody's guess who takes that one, because it's literally maybe last possession at that point. But I think the key for Sunnyvale is certainly to try to limit some of that, get their ground game going, which is proven to be something that Glen Rose can struggle with, and hopefully ride that out from there.
And I think Sunnyvale, when they do go through the underneath stuff in their passing game, which they do, from time to time. Again, that linebacker core, Devin Sterling is not the only one. I mean, Jake Taylor is off to a great start. Cole Flannery, Tripp McAda, the quarterback, plays some linebacker.
Lots of two-way players in this game.
Yeah. That's the beauty of the 4A football. But then I think underneath they're really equipped to handle that. It's going to be in the back end, and when they extend the field, that's going to fall on safeties. Ethan Akins, Will Van Vessen, like I say, Brian Perry, another two-way player at defensive back. Keaton Manis leads the team with 5 pass breakups. So potentially they have the ability to slow that offense down. Doing it though is a totally different matter. And the other big thing that stuck out looking at Cameron Griffin, he has just one interception in 94 attempts.
Yep.
So, if you're going to be, if you're going to try to make those big plays, this is not a guy that makes a lot of mistakes. So you're going to have to force the issue up front and put some pressure on him if you're going to hope to, maybe swing that turnover margin.
One thing that's going to be big for Sunnyvale is how they come out and start the game, specifically on defense, because if you just look at what, Glen Rose has shown these first 3 games, they come out guns blazing. They are averaging through 3 games almost 17 points in the first quarter alone. And you factor in, you're going to be, on the road. You imagine Sunnyvale's going to have a pretty fired up crowd for this, if the game of the week voting was any indication. As far as just being able to, Glen Rose is going to try to take that home crowd out of the out of the equation as soon as possible, and they've shown that they have the ability to do that with just how quickly they come and strike. They're not a team that just kind of feels you out a little bit and then just starts settle. Once they kind of get a feel, then they settle in, then they start going deep. They just come out and just immediately come out swinging.
That's a good way to win a shootout too. If you're expecting a game to be something crazy like 42-35 or even closer than that or more higher scoring, a good way to start those games is to get out to a 14, 20-point lead and try to establish something where, okay, we'll just trade touchdowns the rest of the game. I've already got a little bumper that's going to kind of carry me. So,
And Sunnyvale's been able to do that in their games as well. They haven't had to play catch-up. But the other interesting factor, because we just got through breaking down Glen Rose's passing game against Sunnyvale's running game, kind of, what if it's raining? What if it's pouring down rain in a monsoon? Then all of a sudden, you might think Glen Rose's passing game has a slight edge right now. Well, that flips completely if the weather is bad. And Sunnyvale can use that big offensive line and that ground and committee, Tripp McAda running the ball, their stable of other backs. I mean, if it's nasty weather, I think that falls really into Sunnyvale's favor.
But it could also make tackling Weston Holcomb all that more difficult.
Yes.
We've kind of taken a look at kind of the ins and outs of this matchup. So, gentlemen, where are we leaning as far as a winner for this one goes?
I took Sunnyvale, I guess, just on the back of home field momentum, being 3-0. But I mean, it was one of those true on the picket line, those games that you love to give us. That's just kind of a coin flip and could really go either direction. So I took Sunnyvale, but I could see it playing out any number of ways.
I went back and forth on this game as well. I mean, I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah.
That Glen Rose has been, I think Glen Rose has played a little bit tougher competition across the board, and they've been in closer games, which I think may give them a slight edge going into the fourth quarter. But again, Taylor just mentioned home field advantage. This is Sunnyvale. They go out every week trying to build their program. This is a program that's only been around since 2010. So those guys, every time they go out there and have a chance to make a statement against a team that's kind of well known in those 4A circles or whichever circles, they're going to do it, especially at home. So they're going to come out prepared. This is their final non-district tune-up. Again, I think it comes down to the wire though, and 7 points either way, it wouldn't surprise me.
Let's see. Obviously, the 8.1 yards per carry that they allowed, again, that Glen Rose, I should say, allowed against Springtown definitely does give me pause. 406 rushing yards total in that game. But at the same time, like what you mentioned with, just the schedule that Glen Rose has played to this point, even though they lost to Springtown, I don't think that's a bad loss by any stretch. Waco Connolly and Waco Connolly's regionally ranked, I believe, in the same region as Sunnyvale is.
Behind Sunnyvale.
So I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of just a bet that they've shown well against the higher caliber of competition than Sunnyvale has, and that doesn't mean that Sunnyvale's not going to go out and and just prove all that they're every bit as good as those teams that have lost to Glen Rose already. But just that again, sport proven against better competition was the tiebreaker in this one for me, and what I anticipate will be a very close shootout, and I went with Glen Rose on this one. This was actually, I think, either the first or second time all year though that on the picket line we had a perfect 3-3 split.
There haven't been many, even games where we expected there to be some. There haven't really been any so far.
But nevertheless, the staff was torn, and at the end of it all, we wound up in a complete stalemate. So 3-3 for our game of the week, Sunnyvale versus Glen Rose, set for Friday, 7:30 p.m. out at Raider Stadium. Obviously, that could change depending on the weather, but nevertheless, we've had our say in this game. What about Sunnyvale's star quarterback, Mr. 7 touchdowns himself, Tripp McAda? Well, this morning, Devin and myself caught up with Tripp to talk a bit about just his season, some of his backstory, and in Sunnyvale's big game Friday against Glen Rose, and we will see what Tripp had to say after a word from this sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, exterior, if you need it painted, ATD Painting has got you covered. At ATD Painting, their goal is to provide a home improvement experience that is a great value, trouble-free, and enjoyable. And painting is really just kind of scratching the surface as to what these appointments entail. For ATD Painting's interior projects, things like painting, wall repair, ceiling repair, they'll make sure that your floors and furniture are protected and that everything is all cleaned up afterwards. For exterior projects, not only will they do the painting, but they will hand scrape loose paint, reattach loose boards, recalc windows or doors, plus much more. Not only that, if you visit their website right now, atdpainting.com, you can find a coupon for $200 off a complete exterior purchase. Once again, ATD Painting. They've got 4 locations in the Metroplex, including in Plano and Louisville. For more information, call 972-694-8888 or visit atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Hey y'all, this is Devin Hassan with the Star Local Media Podcast. We are talking Game of the Week, and this week as voted on by the readers, Sunnyvale versus Glen Rose. And so we're out here at Sunnyvale with quarterback Tripp McAda. Tripp, appreciate you taking a couple minutes to join us here. First and foremost, most recently a 55-39 win over Brownsboro, off to a 3-0 start. What's the confidence level like right now in that locker room?
Well, I mean, when you got a line that can move the ball like we can, you can do whatever you want. And so we like that. We like how we fought the ball on defense, and we just got to keep getting better.
Now, you had a stat line last week. 5 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 7 touchdowns overall. Have you ever had a game like that before?
Maybe middle school, but not one at the high school level.
Well, is that something that you realize as it's going on, or is that something that someone will kind of tap you on the shoulder afterwards and say, hey, you know you accounted for 7 scores today?
Yeah, I mean, we were on offense so much, I was just worrying about winning the game, just keeping the score above theirs. And about, halfway through the third quarter, they started talking to me. It was kind of funny because my brother plays JV, and he had 6 touchdowns the night before. Oh, wow. So it kind of became like a personal competition.
Okay. Well, speaking of family, your dad was a quarterback, correct?
Yes, sir.
Played at Mesquite and then played at the Army and was actually drafted in the NFL. What kind of impact did that have on you in terms of pursuing football and even pursuing the quarterback position?
I mean, he's always been my number 1 fan and my coach. And before I could even keep my head up, he was throwing footballs at me and having them roll back. And one day I picked it up and threw it back, and he's like, all right, here we go.
Well, and are y'all the type that, I guess, you start breaking down the game 30 minutes afterwards, or is it more of a laid back, we kind of talk about it on the weekends, or kind of describe that relationship now that he's kind of watching from the sidelines and you're on the field?
No, we got back at about 1:30 after the Brownsboro game. And my dad texted me, he goes, hey, I already watched the first half, catch up and meet me in my room. So definitely right after the game.
Well, that's got to be a neat experience, though, having just that another voice that's kind of been through the wars, in addition to the great coaching staff you have here.
Yeah, I mean, he's, like I said, he's always my number 1 fan. I mean, the coaches can hear him from the bleachers. Hey, man, my grandpa. So.
Well, last year you started all year as a sophomore. Put together a nice season, rushed for over 1,000 yards, passed for over 1,000 yards. When you look back where you were at this point last year compared to where you are now, how have you grown as a quarterback?
Biggest thing is just accuracy and turnovers. I had too many turnovers last year, and that's what I focused on in the off season. And that's been my main focus through the first 3 weeks.
And now, the great thing about some of these smaller classifications is you play both ways sometimes.
Yes,
play a little linebacker as well?
Yes, sir.
How do you enjoy playing defense?
Well, so when I was little, I didn't get to play much quarterback, so it was mostly defense. So I grew up playing defense, and I'm linebacker first, so I love getting a hit. Okay, well, see, that's a true quarterback mentality right there. Well, and one of the things that's unique about Sunnyvale as well is you have the high school, the elementary, the middle school campus all right here together. When did you start attending Sunnyvale schools? 3rd grade.
3rd grade. So basically about the time the football program was getting started,
yes,
correct? So what's that like? I guess, what does that add to the atmosphere? Because a lot of times, even if I'm out here, you see kids from the elementary school coming over for the football game. You see the people from the middle school coming over. It's kind of that just kind of sense of community, sense of school pride. What does that add to the atmosphere here at Sunnyvale?
I mean, it's so cool. Pregame, you see the little elementary school kids out on the side of the field playing their own game, and they got the players, and they're, oh, I'm Tripp, I'm Devin, so it's fun. It's like you're one of the big dogs, which is nice.
Okay. Well, and a lot of times teams will meet before the season starts, kind of adopt a motto, kind of adopt a mantra. Did y'all do that this season?
Yes, sir. Our motto was trust the process.
Trust the process.
Yes,
okay.
From 3A to 4A, they asked how we're going to do it different. Nothing's different. You just trust the process, and things will figure itself out. Okay.
Well, I'll be remiss if we didn't discuss our game of the week, which, like I say, Sunnyvale versus Glen Rose, Friday night, 7:30 p.m. out here at Raiders Stadium. I know y'all have been talking about it all week. What have y'all, your thoughts on Glen Rose, and what kind of game do you expect out there this week?
High-powered offense, good offensive line, and I think our main focus is just going to be keep the ball out of their hands.
Well, I was going to say they have a high-powered offense. I think in the High School Coaches Association poll, they're ranked number 1 in 4A Division 1 or Division 2 Region 1, whereas y'all are number 5 in 4A Region 2, Division 2, Division 2, Region 2. That's a handful, mouthful, I should say. Do you kind of use this game as a measuring stick going into district, going against a top team like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's in the back of your head, but I mean, it's just another game. It's at home, again, with an underdog, just like last time we were at home, and we're just worrying about getting the win for our home fans.
Okay, and last thing for you, kind of looking big picture here, you start district play next week. As you mentioned, you're kind of going into a new classification, but you're treating it the same, new opposition. What are your big picture, long-term goals, not just for district, but hopefully once you get into the playoffs?
Every year we have a goal to be 1-0, which we did that. Win district, play till Thanksgiving. So win district and then play through Thanksgiving. We'll see how that happens from then.
Okay, well, I believe that's just about a wrap. Tripp McAda, appreciate you jumping on here. This is Devin Haston signing off from Sunnyvale High School, and now back to the podcast.
Thanks again to Tripp McAda for taking time to chat for our Student Athlete Spotlight in advance of our game of the week, Sunnyvale versus Glen Rose. We got 4 more games to break down for you, including a couple that have already changed their date of play because of the impending inclement weather. One of those games, let's get right to it. Allen and Plano, the game that fell 1 vote shy to Sunnyvale for game of the week, a game which had plenty of support from the Wildcats and Eagles faithful, but nevertheless, we'll just give a nice little capsule-sized breakdown of this one. So this game is now going to be Thursday at 7 o'clock out at Eagles Stadium. This is, Allen has kind of lorded over Plano ISD for a while now. I think we mentioned it on Monday's podcast, but it was back in 2005 when was the last time that a Plano ISD program beat Allen, and that was Plano Senior. They did it 45-7, quite emphatic, and then Allen has swept PISD every year since, and there have been some close calls along the way. Plano and in particular gave him a good run back in Kyler Murray's first year back in 2012. Almost handed them their what would still be their only loss in Eagle Stadium if they had managed to convert a 2-point conversion inside the final minute of the game. But nevertheless, Allen has a 12-game winning streak over Plano. The big storyline heading into this one is simply the vaunted rushing attack of Plano going up against an Allen defense that is just as playing as well as it ever has to this point. I mean, they shut out Mesquite Horn to begin the year. They were outscoring Utah East 52-0 into the fourth quarter before Utah East got 20 garbage time points, and then they shut out Capel in one half of play. That game was canceled at halftime due to the weather. But nevertheless, they've played 10 quarters, pitched a shutout in 9 of them. We'll see if that changes against a Plano team that certainly has the ability to just rack off big touchdowns both on the ground and through the air, Devin, as you can attest last week against Rowlett. And that's just kind of something that's really jumped off the page about Plano, is just that added element of if you've been following Plano football, you're well aware of what Kyron Cumby's capable of doing, just the home run threat that he brings. This season, you've seen their sophomore Tylen Hines offer the same with all of his long touchdown runs, but now, Plano's passing game is, the efficiency is still not where it needs to be. They're completing only about 45% of their passes, but but I believe Cole Winnett's yards per completion is the highest for a Plano quarterback since Richard Lago back in 2012. So when Plano does complete a pass, it's typically for a pretty hefty gain, as Devin, you saw last week against Rowlett.
Yeah, That game was odd.
Yeah, it sounds
in terms of because it wasn't what you expected. I mean, the Plano did hit for 2 long touchdown passes. One was a complete coverage breakdown with 1 second left in the first half. Cole Winnett has some other open looks. I mean, those Plano wide receivers were getting some space, in the back. Just missed him a couple times. Hit the big one in the fourth quarter to tie it up late. But my biggest question is, I'm sure Allen, the way their defense is played, I don't know if they need to specifically game plan for anything, if they're just that good. Right. But they watched that tape against Rowlett. Oh, yeah. And Rowlett, and how Rowlett handled Kyron Cumby and Cody Christ. They played last year. That duo combined for, I think, 440 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, they averaged 15 yards a touch, both of them. They couldn't do anything last week. 18 carries for 57 yards between the two of them. Basically a shade over 3 yards per carry. Kyron Cumby 3 catches for 0 yards. And Rowlett did a really good job. I mean, they just spied Cumby. wherever he went, they spied him, and then they did a good job loading up the middle, because that's where kind of Cody Crisp bread and butter is.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't find any openings like he could a year ago. And so if you look at that, watching that game last week and saying, okay, Rowlett is doing this, and Rowlett's a solid team. Allen is Allen, and
On the one hand, I think it's good for Plano that they got a game like that out of their system, where they were able to work through the run game not being there, since they are so reliant on that. They're able to go back, watch the film, and see Coach McCullough attributed to a lot of just blocking breakdowns they had. They'll try to patch that up. But all that being said, I mean, I'm not sure how much it'll matter with Allen's defense and just how good that they're playing. I obviously sided with the Eagles in this. It's just how do you? I mean, again, you're just not going to ever pick against Allen to lose a regular season game until it happens.
Yeah, it's just Allen rarely loses.
Yeah.
Allen almost never loses district games, and Allen never loses at home. So it makes it for a pretty easy pick.
They haven't lost at home. They have not lost a district game period since, I want to say it was 2010 against Hebron, 2010 or 2011, one of those 2 years. Hebron got them at the old Eagle Stadium, for that matter. But it was a clean sweep around the board for Allen over Plano. Let's see, another game that is on Thursday. This one, let's see, McKinney North. This and Rockwall-Heath. This game got bumped from Friday to Thursday. This one is going to be, let's see, is it 7? It's 7 p.m. out at Wilkerson Sanders Stadium out in Rockwall. Heath comes into this one. What are they, 1-2? North is 2-1.
Sounds right.
Yes, it is.
And, the big story for McKinney North early into this season, as Kendrick Johnson can attest, is just the strides that North is making on defense to try to, they're a program that is, long since been a team that needs to win shootouts, and they've just got all the offense in the world. The defense is, trying to, to make some gains, and they've done a solid job this season, having held 2 of their first 3 opponents to 17 points or less, really working to showcase the improvements on that side of the ball. They only held Frisco Wakeland to 17 points last week, and you'd think on most nights that if they hold anybody to 17 points, that should be more than enough. But the offense got tripped up, only managed 14 points in a 17-14 loss. Had a chance midway through the fourth quarter to potentially get a tie or go-ahead points, but they were stuffed on 4th down just outside the red zone. But nevertheless, I ended up siding with North in this one. It feels like Heath's kind of working through some struggles on offense of their own, and I think this will be it's a vote of confidence in the North defense to continue its slow resurgence.
Right. Yep. I sided the same way. I think North just has a little bit more going on right now. I think that they've had a good start to their season. I think that they're they started their season with a good win over McKinney. That's a game that they should have won and that we all had them winning, but it's still nice to start that way, and they haven't really let off since. I think they're just kind of feeling good about themselves, and I think Heath, as you mentioned, is just kind of working through a few things that are going to set them back enough to where North should take that one.
Yeah, and I'm not. These McKinney teams are starting to be like the Frisco teams for me, which I can't. I cannot ever tell what they're going to do.
If North got tripped up, I wouldn't be surprised.
But you look at it that. Starting off with wins over McKinney and just Northwest, when you look at it now, okay, how impressive was that really? And then, I think most of us had Wakeland, beating Wakeland last year.
It was a clean sweep for them over Wakeland.
And then you look at it, and Cam Constantine and Dylan Markowitz, they're both playing. Is that by design? It's on a rotation. I know they did that last year, 2-on-1 off type stuff. I know they experimented, but I have said it many times before. I do not like quarterback rotations. I think it makes it hard to develop a rhythm, and I think you saw, you're capable of games, like last week, where even though your potential is there to score 30 that night, you can't get that rhythm, and you end up, losing the game because of it. I'm not blaming it solely on that. Yeah. But again, Rockwall-Heath may be a team with even more question marks. They have a nice quarterback in Jackson Van Beavers, who's thrown for 457 yards, but the running back they haven't had anybody step up in the backfield. They have a couple of nice wide receivers, but you look at their results. They lost to Timber Creek in a blowout, 47-10. They beat a Wiley team if they're not down all year long, they're certainly off to a slow start, and then fell to Richland last week. So they've got questions of their own. I think McKinney North has proven a little bit more, even though, like I said, I'd like to see him develop some kind of consistency on with that quarterback rotation. But I have McKinney North as well.
It was once again a clean sweep for McKinney North. So the staff still keeping the faith in the Bulldogs as they venture out to Rockwall let's see. Let's roll with another Thursday game. This game, a game that at the start of the season looked like there might be some intrigue there. A nice, fun game out in Mesquite between Denton Ryan and West Mesquite. This one is 7 o'clock Thursday out at Mesquite Memorial Stadium. Denton Ryan has already slayed one Mesquite ISD foe this season after they opened up the year in a competitive scrap with Poteet. You were out there to see that. First off, what was your impressions on Denton Ryan?
Denton Ryan is the number 3 team in the state, according to the AP rankings, but this is not the same Denton Ryan. And they've only played 2 games, so it's a short sample size. But you can't expect any team to replace a Spencer Sanders. Anytime you have a player graduate and I had to double check when I was doing my Poteet research. 5,200 yards, okay, that's impressive, but 70 touchdowns? That is just mind-blowing. And so when you lose a player like that was such a focal point of your offense, both running the ball and throwing the ball, it's going to take time, and they've really kind of struggled. They're averaging 178 yards a game. The reason they're the number 3 team in the state right now is that defense. Jaquez Flemings, Anthony Flemings, J.C. Coleman, Delshun Dunn. In 2 games, they have 13 sacks and 28 tackles for loss. And they basically lived in the Poteet backfield when I saw them week 1. They're just so big and they're so physical and so fast up front that, I was talking to, Cody Groves, Poteet head coach, after the game. He said, no one's going to be able to run on them all year. That defensive front it looks like a college defensive front almost. So that's going to be the big challenge facing West Mesquite. I do think West Mesquite, they are coming off a 54-42 win over Keller Timber Creek. They had their game against Lancaster 2 weeks ago canceled. West Mesquite had opened against Hutto, a very good Hutto team that made it 3 rounds deep in the playoffs last year. Put up points there. So I think if West Mesquite can break a couple of big plays, and they have playmakers on offense. Neil Johnson, the quarterback, has kind of settled in nicely into the passing game after playing wide receiver for the most part last year. He can also run the ball a little bit. Ty Jordan was a guy who I thought was going to be one of the breakout stars in the area after primarily backing up Curtis Williams last year. Last week, 20 carries for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then we talked about Dylan Wright, the Texas A&M commit, one of the highest rated prospects in the state, and he's off to a hot start with 11 catches for 165 yards, a couple scores. So they kind of have those playmakers that if they have an opportunity, if they get an opening against that Denton Ryan, which is tough enough to do, that I think they can make a couple plays, and I think that West Mesquite defense has good athletes. They've given up their share of points against more prolific offenses, but that's where Denton Ryan is struggling right now, is to move the ball. So I think most people, across the Metroplex are going to go, oh, it's Denton Ryan, and just think Denton Ryan in a landslide. Or I think this game could be a lot closer than people think. Again, that game against Poteet was 28-14, and that went down to the wire, and their second game went to overtime against Keller Fossil Ridge, a good Fossil Ridge team, but it's still 26-19 went to overtime.
But at the end of the day, I ended up going Denton Ryan on this one, just because when you have that decided an advantage in the trenches like they do with that defensive front, that's always going to be such a swing for me in just about any matchup.
I think I agree that this game is closer than it looks on paper. I don't think it's quite the level of obviously not the level of Allen, but Denton Ryan can feel a little bit similar sometimes, where it's just like, I'm not going to go against Denton Ryan just because of the program itself and how tough they are to beat pretty much year in and year out. So I went with Ryan, but I do think this game would be a lot closer than people think, and then it looks on paper. So
might be closer than people think, but the picket line disagrees, at least as far as a winner loser standpoint. It was a clean sweep for Denton Ryan. Let's get out of here with one more game, one out in Frisco, a battle of District 7-5A Division II programs. Frisco versus Lebanon Trail.
Could be a good one, man.
Friday, 7 p.m. at the Star. Frisco, congratulations to Frisco. They snapped a 13-game losing streak last week following their 35-21 victory over Denton Braswell. Got strong games from Carter Yates, who attempted just 7 passes, completed 5, had almost 150 yards passing. With the infrequency that Frisco passes the ball, you'll take that any day of the week. And then running back Nick Stanton at 150 yards on the ground as well. So shout out for the Raccoons for finally snapping that slump. It was a rough go last year for them, 0-10, and they're at least 3 games into the season off on the right foot, and they got a chance to go 2 in a row against a first-year varsity program in Lebanon Trail that started off the year on a hot note. They got a 28-14 win over Fort Worth Southwest, but have fallen on some tougher times since then. A couple lopsided losses to Arlington Heights and Denison. For me, this one boils down to simply, it's always just tough to kind of gauge how a program's going to fare the first time that they see Frisco, because even if Frisco's down, like, they just play such a unique style of football with that wing tee that the first time you go up against that, it can just be like a brand new, just a brand new style of play, because you don't see that. Teams just don't run that stuff at the high school level. And then you factor in just the physical discrepancies between a program like Frisco and a program like Lebanon Trail, a first-year varsity program. I don't believe they have any seniors at their at their high school, and I feel like in a matchup that's where physicality is going to be a bit more of the focal point because of the style of play that Frisco encourages. I feel like the discrepancy there between going up against 17-year-olds versus 15 and 16-year-olds on the other side of the ball. I just think that stuff kind of sticks out a bit more in the stylistic matchup. So I ended up rolling with Frisco to make it 2 straight in this one.
Yep, I did as well. I'll take Frisco to win their second in a row. I think it might be another game that's a little bit closer and a little bit more competitive, at least for maybe the first half. To your point, maybe it's one of those games where Lebanon Trail comes out pretty hyped up. This is maybe they feel probably one of the more beatable teams in their district. Their chance to kind of make a statement against a crosstown team. So I think it might start close, and then maybe some of those little incremental advantages start to take over as the game goes along. And I think Frisco does outlast them, but I think it'll be certainly one of the more competitive games for Lebanon Trail, who have already shown that they can be competitive. So I think it'll be a pretty good one, a pretty good a little Frisco matchup. It's one of those games that the first year at the varsity level, you kind of circled these games. You're not going to go out and beat the Lake Dallases and Lovejoys and Reedies of the world your first year at the varsity level in a district like that. But you circle your matchup with Frisco. You circle your matchup with Memorial, the other first-year team. So who knows? Maybe Lebanon Trail gets hyped up for this one. This could be one of their more important and more moral victory style games. But I took Frisco. So
I took Frisco fairly convincingly. I think Frisco may be one of those sleeper teams that's able to do something as far as making a push to the playoff spot. And the reason I say that was based on one of their losses. To Melissa.
Yeah.
They scored 48 points against a very good Melissa team. They rolled up over 600 yards and over 400 on the ground. And as you mentioned, that wing tee is so tough to replicate in practice that teams they can't really cope with it until they get on the field to really get that game speed and how it's run. You mentioned Nick Stanton. Well, they got 4 guys that have already rushed for more than 100 yards.
That's Frisco football for you.
But when the wing tee is most effective is when you have multiple guys, when you rotate those guys, when you can have 3 guys in the back and maybe somebody over here on the side coming in motion, and the defense honestly has no idea. You don't have just the one option. And the other thing, Carter Yates, for a wing tee quarterback, 20 of 33. Most, for some of the, from kind of following along Naaman Forrest running the wing tee here in recent years, there were games where they averaged 4 or 5 passes a game. So if you can have a guy that can go out there and throw the ball 10 to 12 times a game and complete a high percentage and strike when the defense starts cheating in and get those guys and hit them with those big plays, that's a huge advantage, because sometimes you can't even find a quarterback that can do that. So I like Frisco in this one, and like I say, I'm kind of interested to see. I'll have to run it by Mr. Brian Murphy, the expert on all things Frisco, but this may be a team that if they can get that wing tee churning, that may be able to make some noises here.
So there you go. And the picket line agreed. It was a clean sweep of Frisco over Lebanon Trail. So that is a look at a few of the marquee matchups in our neck of the woods for this week. We'll be keeping you all apprised if any more games, if the schedules change, if any games are moved to Thursday. You can check that information out at our website, starlocalmedia.com. Otherwise, we will be out and about covering these games both Thursday and Friday for most of us, most likely. As far as coverage goes, Devin, what do you have on tap this week?
Opening week of the 10-6A football season, I will be at Homer B. Johnson Stadium Thursday as Rowlett and Naaman Forrest, who basically battled it out for second and third place last year, meet up in their opener. And then on Friday, I have the big clash of 0-3 teams. Didn't expect that. But Saxe and Wiley in a big game. Saxe looking to bounce back. Wiley, this is kind of their MO, even in 6-6A and even in tougher districts. They start slow, but then, but this is about the stage of the year where they start to get things going, and you all of a sudden see a team that's 0-3, they're 6-4, 7 weeks from now. So a couple of interesting matchups as both teams try to get off, or all 4 teams, I should say, try to get off to district on the right foot.
For me, the plan was initially to have Plano and Allen on Friday, and now that one's on Thursday, well, my Friday's wide open. So I'll be covering the Plano-Allen game, obviously, Thursday night, 7 p.m. at Eagle Stadium. On Friday, I'm probably going to end up taking a dip in the private school waters for a second. I'm going to go out to probably Prestonwood Christian to cover their non-district game against longtime district rival Argyle Liberty Christian. This game's significant because it is their first matchup against Prestonwood's their former offensive coordinator, Stephen Greek, who is now the head coach at Liberty Christian. Liberty Christian had a nice win last week over Brock, and they come in with a little bit of momentum coming in. It's a nice student versus teacher matchup of Stephen Greek and Chris Cunningham. Prestonwood is 3-0 and looks the part of one of the best teams in the private school neck of the woods, as they traditionally are the reigning state champions. Should be a fun one.
I will be out Thursday now. My game also got moved up. I'll be out in Princeton, where the Panthers will host Lake Dallas in a 7 p.m. matchup Thursday. And then, like you, my Friday all of a sudden opened up. So most likely I will be at Clark Stadium for Plano West and Dallas Jesuit in a 9-6A matchup. But obviously, depending on if that game gets moved up, which games actually stick on Friday, all that good stuff, it's a little bit TBD as far as Friday goes at this point. But we will certainly keep you apprised. Which, by the way, relevant in our coverage area, it just came down that McKinney at Prosper has also been moved up to Thursday, so
including all homecoming activity.
Yeah. So games are falling all over the place and scooting up a day. So we will keep you apprised of those as they come along. So.
All right, and that'll just about do it for this edition of the podcast, folks. This has been Matt Welch with Star Local Media. Devin, Taylor, appreciate y'all for swinging by, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week. We will talk to y'all later. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. Performance Food Group delivers more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. If you want to get in on that process, PFG just might have a spot for you. Their McKinney office is currently hiring. Job openings include Class A CDL drivers and warehouse order selectors, as well as many other entry and part-time positions. An ideal choice for college students or people just wanting to find new careers in general. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers for more job openings. If you prefer to contact them by phone, you can call at 214-491-3130 for more details. Once again, that is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.